Hello, wrestling fans. I am longtime independent wrestling fan Robert, and I have a VHS review of Jersey All Pro Wrestling Tough Love. This event was historic for one main reason. It turned out to be the last JAPW show ever held at the Charity Hall in Bayonne, New Jersey, and it took place back on February 22nd of 2003. The match opens up with Tony Lazaro with fellow H-Effect members Deranged and Dixie in the ring, and eventually out comes Lazaro's opponent, Rick Blade. The match started off slow. There was a distraction by, I forgot who came up to the apron, distracted the referee, and Lazaro hit Blade in the balls. Eventually, he also then connected a brain buster. Then Blade executed a powerbomb backbreaker. Dixie distracts the referee while Deranged comes into the ring, hits Blade with a chair, and Lazaro hits some kind of pump handle type driver, I suppose, and Lazaro got the win. After the matchup, not content with the victory, Lazaro kept beating Blade down until Blade eventually retaliated, and Lazaro hit for Blade hit Blade hit some awesome move, I don't know what it was called, into a pinning combination, but the referee's telling Blade, no, the match is over. Okay. Up next, we see promoter Fat Frank Idavia, rest his soul, interviewing the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Casey Blade and EC Negro, talking about their match for the Jersey All Pro Wrestling Tag Team Championship, saying they were defending against the Shaolin Wrecking Crew, and EC Negro referred to them as two walking heart attacks, called them Team Cholesterol, and that was the end of that interview segment. Then, ringing out to Scott Matthews, asks the crowd, "Are you ready for the main event?" And now this was the match that headlined the show, but it went on second as Mafia, aka Dan Moff, accompanied the ring by Low-Key, challenged Mr. JAPW himself, the notorious 187 Homicide, for the heavyweight title, and Homicide was accompanied to the ring by Monster Mac, who had a handheld camera in his hand recording the match. Now, the Homicide and Moff fist bumped just as the bell rang. Homicide puts Moff in a headlock, and Moff countered that by attempting the burning hammer right off the bat, but Homicide, of course, had that well scouted. Homicide hit a hip toss into a triangle choke. Homicide used a chair on Moff on the floor. Homicide hit a forearm to Moff in the corner, gave him an exploder suplex. Moff used a chair on Homicide when they went out to the floor, and I believe he ran Homicide into that wall that the Hit Squad were known for pressing wrestlers over their head into that wall. Maybe that part of the very room, that should have been called Charity Wall. Homicide eventually took control in the ring. He hit a face wash. They did a dive to the floor. Moff counters with a leg lariat, puts Homicide in the corner, gives him the cannonball. Homicide, I think, hit a power slam. Then they were exchanging hard slaps with each other. Homicide hits the shiny wizard. Eventually, Homicide climbs to the top rope, does a stomp from the top rope, not like Low-Key does, but it was a double stomp nonetheless. Put on an STF. Moff eventually grabbed the ropes. Homicide hits a tornado DDT off the second rope, puts on a dragon sleeper. Moff eventually breaks out of that. He hits Homicide with a spine buster. Then hits Homicide retaliates with a Saitoplex or backdrop driver. Then he hits two Yakuza kicks. Moff attempted the Kobashi Plex, but Homicide countered it. But then Moff tried a second time and hit the Kobashi Plex. Moff hits the Burning Hammer, but Homicide kicked out of that. Homicide eventually hits a scoop pile driver, and Homicide, attempted like a suplex or a brainbuster, but Moff countered that with a small package and pinned him to become the new Jersey All Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. After the match, Monster Mac and Low-Key come into the ring, and Homicide's got the belt, and Mac and Low-Key are out on the floor, saying, "Hey man, what are you doing?" And Homicide eventually comes back in the ring, and he takes the microphone. He says, "That was a 2 count," and then he basically laid the belt at Moff's feet, and they hugged, and Moff accidentally stepped on the belt at that point. Moff eventually gets the microphone, saying that when he first started out as a fan in the crowd at Charity Hall, and then became a part of the promotion, and then eventually, as everyone's leaving the rings, Slick Wagner Brown comes out, attacks Homicide, which leads to Moff and Wagner brawling in the ring, and Moff clotheslines Wagner to the floor, and then Wagner is like cornered by Mac and Low-Key, while Moff is helping Homicide to his feet, and Wagner eventually left the ringside area. So now the reason why the match went on, the main event of this show went on second, the second match of the show, because this was right here was actually an afternoon show. Another thing that was historic about it, was actually their second Saturday afternoon show they were starting to do at the time in Charity Hall. And Low-Key and the Hit Squad, they appeared at another show in another state later that night. Okay. Okay. Up next, we have the Shaolin Wrecking Crew, Magic and Suba, as they were set to challenge the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, EC Negro and KC Blade, for the Tag Team Championship. And as the DRS's music is playing, Becky Bayless came through the crowd, and gets the SWC's attention, while the DRS hit the ring, and they hit the Wrecking Crew from behind with the belts, but it had no effect. And the crew took an early advantage. DRS eventually take control. Suba hit a power slam on Casey Blade before giving Magic a hot tag. The DRS, the crew, they sandwiched the Scoundrels in the middle of the ring. Then Suba hits a Vader bomb off the second rope onto both Scoundrels. Negro, Becky Bayless, in the meantime, comes on the apron, arguing with the referee. Suba hits a Vader bomb just on Blade, because Negro had already gotten out of the ring. And then the Wrecking Crew turn their attention to Becky. In the meantime, the DRS grab the belts, and they leave the ringside area and deliberately get counted out. So the Shaolin Wrecking Crew was victorious, but did not get the Tag Team Championship. But the Shaolin Wrecking Crew, they sandwich Becky in the middle of... They basically do a sandwich job on Becky, and then Suba gives Becky a Vader bomb, and then the Wrecking Crew leaves the ring. The DRS come back out to check on Bayless, and ring announcer Scott Matthews reminds the crowd that the Tag Team Championship cannot change on a count out, so the Scoundrels were still officially the champions. The champions. Next up, we have a singles matchup with Azrael taking on Nick Burke. Before the match got underway, the H Effect, Deranged, Dixie, and Tony Lazaro. By the way, Lazaro, I think this might have been his final JAPW show, because he eventually left wrestling to enlist in the Army and eventually passed away years later. Don't know if he was still in the service at the time he passed on. His real name was Apollo Santiago. But the H Effect, they come in and the fans are really eating H Effect up, eating them alive, and they offered Azrael to join them, and the fans were, well, to be on the safe side, the fans were calling the H Effect homosexuals. And eventually, I guess Azrael never really did answer the question about joining up with them, because the match eventually got underway between Burke and Azrael. Eventually, Azrael hits a moonsault out to the floor on Burke. The Azrael hit a 2 victim kicks to the back, and then did a flip over Burke and did like a side drop kick combination. I used to love when he used to do that when I first watched him, but he stopped doing that one. And then eventually the H Effect come back out to interfere, but Rick Blade, I think Deranged tried to get Nick Burke to join the H Effect, but Burke attacks Deranged. Rick Blade hits the ring, and eventually the H Effect skedaddle on out of there. And the match was pretty much, I guess, a no contest or a double DQ of sorts, but obviously there was no winner. Okay, next, for a nice change of pace, we have a women's match, as we see April Hunter go one-on-one with Nikki Roxx. Nikki Roxx later became Roxy Laveau in TNA Wrestling. They exchanged arm wringers in the beginning. April was on the second rope, but she was knocked off with a forearm to the floor. April snapmared Nikki over the ropes to the floor. April hit a nice perfect plex, which the late Kurt Hennig would be proud of, and this show actually took place about a week and a half after Hennig had passed away. Roxx comes back with some offense, including the sidewalk slam, but I remember it as the old Dino Bravo move. April kicked out of that, and she eventually recovered and hit a running blockbuster, which she called the Headhunter, and she pinned Nikki Roxx to pick up the victory. I don't know if JAPW at that time was planning to start doing women's shows back then, because I think April had been the dominant woman in the promotion ever since she and Slick Wagner Brown had debuted, I think a year or two earlier. Next, we were set for tag team action, where both the television and light heavyweight championships, respectively, were on the line. As representing the H Effect, Deranged and Dixie, accompanied to the ring by Tony Lazaro. They're in the ring, and Dixie's got his arm in a sling. Deranged has got tape around his midsection, and claiming that they got hurt running down the stairs backstage, and they said to the crowd, look, we're sorry, but we're not going to be able to wrestle. And so they decided to the crowd, hey, we're going to sing. What do you guys want to hear us sing? And they started singing It's Raining Men, but then they were saying, no, we're not singing that. And then they were singing Boyz II Men's I'll Make Love to You. In the meantime, Jay Lethal and Red, the television and light heavyweight champions respectively, come out and had some backup in the form of the Insane Dragon, who is Dixie's brother. And Dragon went after, I think he did something to Lazaro, either pulled him out of the ring or attacked him on the floor. And then the match was on, and Rain got tripped up by somebody. It might have been Lazaro, I don't know. Deranged puts Rain a figure 4 leg lock. Jay Lethal eventually gets tagged in, and he and Dixie go at it, and Dixie eventually strikes Lethal with the rolling claw. Yeah. Instead of a rolling elbow, think of he did a spin and did a claw hold on Jay Lethal. Lethal eventually broke out of that. Rain eventually was tagged in. He did, I forgot what kind of movie did onto the range, Insane Dragon hits the ring. He puts Lazaro in some kind of submission hold, and Lethal holds Dixie at bay while Rain pins Deranged to pick up the win, enabling himself to retain his light heavyweight championship and Lethal to retain the television championship. Now, I want to say, like the band Nirvana said, all apologies when I say this, but the H Effect, which started back in 2002 and ran till about 2005, I think it was. I don't think they really got the opportunity to really run as hard as they could in Jersey All Pro Wrestling. I don't know what went wrong, because like I said, this very show was Lazaro's final night before leaving. He decided to leave wrestling. And I think around 2005, was it? I forgot what year it was, but I think maybe both of them took time off from wrestling for a time, for maybe personal reasons or something else. So then we finally reached the final match of this very show. And as we see Slick Wagner Brown with April Hunter take on Jonah Adelman from one of the Tough Enough competitions. Slick attacks Jonah on the floor before he even got in the ring. The fans started a "pay your dues" chant at Jonah. Slick rammed through Jonah's face into the wall. Once they get back in the ring, Jonah hits a nice Japanese arm drag on Slick. Slick retaliated with a modified Samoan drop, power slam by Jonah, and he put an STF on Slick. Slick takes a swinging neck breaker from Jonah. April Hunter comes up to the apron, and Jonah hauls her into the ring. And at that point, Slick, there was enough time for Slick to recover. He scoops Jonah up into a scoop slam position, into like a Uranagi and pin the match to end what was the very last JAPW show at the Charity Hall in Bayonne, New Jersey. Well, although I was not there for this event, you know, I kind of wish I could have gone to JAPW shows much sooner. And, you know, I really think if Loki and the Hit Squad did not have another show to go to, the match with Homicide and Mafia, Dan Moff, that they would have gone on last, because as anyone who remembers that promotion knows, that those four gentlemen, they were pretty much the measuring stick or sticks of that promotion, and who knows how far that promotion would have gone without the four of them. But this was a very good show, great way to, well, it was a good way for JPW to say goodbye to Charity Hall. And if you folks want more JPW VHS or DVD reviews, let me know. Because you know, this particular show that I watched, you know, I hadn't watched it in so long, and I haven't used the VCR in so long. So let me know, and I really miss JPW a lot. Let me know if you want more JPW VHS or DVD reviews, folks. I miss chanting JP.